Livingstons can help you.
This is G. Livingston and Son in Castle Douglas. We're a small tailors and country outfitters, and we were established in 1896. This is the chap that established our business, the first George Livingston. He was educated in Edinburgh, and then he came to Castle Douglas to buy this business off Alexander McAdam, and he'd 13 of a family, 7 daughters, you know, the 7 sisters, and this was his oldest son, Andrew Livingston. And Andrew went to the Tailor and Cutter Academy in Gerrard Street in Chinatown, and you know, learned cutting. And this is him when he got married to my grandmother, Jessie, who had 2 sons, one Andrew, or Drew he was called, and one George. And quite funnily, we've still got one of his frock coats, you know, from then. It would be late 1800s, early 1900s. After that period that, you know, the frock coat sort of disappeared and it was more into, you know, the lounge suit, early versions of what we know today. There were so many shapes and seams on a body coat. There was a bit more skill in fitting it, but when they were done nicely, you know, it was a beautiful garment. I think there was an Andrew before this George as well, but it has been George, Andrew, and Sue and I mucked it up by calling Lewis. So it was sort of broke the chain.
When I was growing up, especially as I went through my teenage years, I tended to rebel and go more the other way. I was quite happy in baggy jeans and a hoodie. The rebelling and the getting away was trying to move away from having lived in a small, quiet market town. I went away and studied in Edinburgh and quite enjoyed city life for 4 or 5 years, but I needed to get away and experience something else for me to appreciate what I couldn't see when I was young. As we get to the point where skilled tailoring staff are much more hard to find, it would be interesting to get some young blood back in the shop. There are certainly lots of skills to be learned from both Dad and Detlef.
What else can you receive?
Talks in English and Chinese.
Right.
It's probably a bit loud at the moment.
Voice reminder function on.
Oh, when you start in the morning.
Hello. Welcome to Use Jack Sewing Machine. Wish you a happy work.
Great. Sounds a bit dodgy, but we met online. 2012, 2013? Back then we were exchanging drafts and technical articles from my German books and magazines. I started in 1988. Back then it was still West Germany, yeah.
That was a German guy in there, they wanted comfort fit. Tailor fit comfort.
That's why German trousers are a bit baggier. The German men demand comfort fit. There wasn't really much work for tailors. I worked at men's outfitters, but they did bespoke as well, but very limited. I think they moved on to high-end ready-to-wear rather than bespoke. I mean, this is Hamburg. This was one of the last places to get something made fully bespoke. No, it's stuck in. The old school tailors, at the beginning after the war, there were thousands of them. 60s, 70s, when the old ones died off, there was no replacement. And of course, then you lose all the knowledge. I think tailoring per se, I think that is actually dying off. 20, 30 years, I'll probably have snuffed it. It's not my problem then.
The high street is declining. You know, our town is losing shops every year. You know, we just heard news about another one that's, you know, possibly going to close. I used to think if I made the best suits, I would attract these type of customers. But in reality, these wealthy customers are very busy people. You know, you need to be in central London or somewhere like that to make it viable. You know, I've learned a lot over the years that just gradual adaptation, but by me travelling to China, getting a consultancy income by going to India, I still do cutting for different tailors to generate more income. So I help other companies. Challenging times, you know, for a small business, you know, to survive. And I just hope with my son that we can keep evolving, and it's going to, you know, make an income that sustains him and his children, you know, that and who knows, maybe another generation will come in. Maybe if things change, it's maybe advise them to do something else. This was a tailoring workshop in 1954, and this is my late father and grandmother. This tailoress, Margaret Blythe, she worked for us for over 50 years. John Trainer, he sat cross-legged on a board, and he even pressed and worked on a board over his knees. And he was with us 50 years, and his father worked 52 years with us. I think this lady was Jean Foster, but I'm not 100% sure. And when John was an apprentice, he got a little bit extra money to come in early in the morning and light the oven that the tailor's irons were in. And it's still got the, you know, the irons inside, which have seen better days now, but there's a good bit of weight in them. And they've got horseshoes that they sat on the table so that they didn't scorch. The blacksmiths must have joined them to make them into a circle. So it's one way of recycling, you know, Horseshoes, that one's been completely joined. It would be a harder job then pressing a suit than it is today. This tailor, Stanley, was Polish, and he made the jacket that Dad cut in the 50s when he won the tailor and cutter competition, you know, which was helped me date this picture. So we just go and pluck one out and see what year we're in. Many in there. Oh, of course it's not going to fit back in now. It's reasonably intact. 1954. That was it, that's Dad with the Keith and Henderson Cup. That year for his jacket. So that's the jacket. The Keith and Henderson Cup and gold medal in this class went to G. Livingston and Son, 75 King Street. I mean, this really was a point that changed our business. Dad winning this competition helped increase the turnover of the business, so much so that the in-house tailors up the stairs couldn't cope with the volume of work. And I think that's really probably one of the reasons that we've survived. Getting in all the national press that a little village tailor beat the Savile Row tailors in a competition, made a big difference in there. The thing that always blows me away is the amount of hand stitching and how tiny they are for them not to have used a machine for that process. The actual shape of the garment shows the testament of it. The canvases have the shape infused into them and it springs back. It stood the test of time.
Detlef, I call him Herman the German, but he kens a day. I came here in 1982 when I wasn't long left school and I hated sewing. But it was a job and it grows on you, I think. I do everything. I finish jackets, I put pockets in, I do alterations, I do buttonholes. I'm versatile because I'll no say, no, I'm not going to do that unless it's something I really can't do. But I'd give it a go. I'll try anything, won't I, Andrew? Within reason. It was hard to begin with till we got into the swing of doing something and then it all just came together. I had one or two wee errors, as you do, but things get frustrating if they didn't go on right. So you swear, fuck, or bastard. I always said I would believe it, I wouldn't last year, and here I am, 40 years later. But I just plod on, try and keep going as long as I can. Quite a lot of people now just want to go into a shop and buy something, and when it's getting a bit worn, they just go out and buy something else. The same. They're no willing to, if it's got a wee hole in it, to try and fix it and what have you. Everything's disposable now.
It was Derek Jackson was a cloth agent for Savile Cloth in London, and he went round different tailors in London and said, "I've got a young lad that's really keen to learn. Would any of you be interested in taking him for a day or so?" One of the days he took me into Edward Sexton. Edward Sexton was a cutter in Burlington Arcade, and that's where he met Tommy Nutter. Valentine's Day 1969, they opened a store together on Savile Row. They created a big following in the day, you know, in the 60s, and then it led to them to make for lots of different personalities of the day, you know, sort of Mick Jagger and the Beatles. I always thought that the success of Nutter was through Edward's cutting, because he was renowned in the trade as just a level above everybody else, a different skill level. So it was a real pairing up. I think the longest spell I spent down there in the 80s was about 6 months with him. When I was working down there, we were also still making for my clients in Castle Douglas. You know, we had to keep the bespoke side going even though I was working away. Edward was actually cutting the patterns for my customers up here, and also his coatmaker Salvo helped me make things as well, so they were getting quite good value from a village tailor. The way that Edward helped me just sharpen up my cutting skills. We did an experiment with the shape of the back neck and the shape of the underarm with this to improve the pattern that we've been using for years. So we used this cloth as a trial. I wanted to get a very clean hindarm on the sleeve, and we also had a dart in the canvas coming from the top and the bottom, which really doubled the amount of shape on the canvas. But the main thing was to keep the stability under the arms so that the garment was very smooth and create a really sharp backside run. I was just lucky to have had Edward in my life. I loved him to bits. This is a draft that I've adapted really ever since I started, and then we've used over and over again, which that way you actually get to know the pattern. We found that a squarer shoulder line needs the neck further back, but for the more natural shoulder line coming in slightly, which reduces the difference that the centre back is brought in, and it cleaned up the backside. Things have been quite close, but there's a little bit more drape coming back. So one of the things I've been doing is just 6 mil, you know, 1/4 of an inch. I've been adding a little bit more. I like to have a jacket when it's canvassed sitting on the table. I like it to be flat here, but to have a forward chest sitting up to give a nice chest shape. And to achieve that, you actually need to have a little bit more shaping put into the canvas than is actually on the cloth. I like a bit of shoulder into the jacket, so we have a puff in there to give shape over the front shoulder bone. If you're doing too much there, it actually creates a shortage through here, which is running to the shoulder blade. The same as if you shape this in too much. I prefer to have more shape on the back, because once you've sewn this together, this is going to be more shaped anyway. If you make the jacket very high at the back here, it's not as clean, but you get a really comfortable jacket. So it's this balance between giving reach and comfort into the jacket, people think a wider armhole lit it out to be more comfy, but actually I do the opposite, and quite often I'm taking the armhole in a bit. You know, the armhole in the right place is actually more comfortable. My father was born in May 1922, and he, you know, grew up above the shop, and he came into the business after he came back from the war, mainly when to help my grandmother, because my grandfather had died when he was away. He was terminally ill with cancer, and so she actually nursed him in the flat above the shop, and she run the business as well. That with reading through old ledgers, it was quite touching to me to look at a date in September the 12th and see my grandfather's writing changing into my grandmother's writing. So that must have been the time that he wasn't fit to come in the shop, you know, and so it, you know, it just marked a moment in time. If you put yourself in her situation with both her sons being away, you know, during the Second World War, and looking after her husband and keeping the business going, she was, you know, a remarkable little lady to keep it all together. Working in a family business, it's not easy, and it was quite hard for my father, you know, to pass over and let me do the cutting and let me in that side of things. But he kept his hand on the reins of the retail side. I mean, still working up until 82, which is, you know, you're still doing a 6-day week at 82. He was really proud to see my son Lewis come in and start to take, you know, things on, and, you know, that so another generation coming into the business really sort of lifted him, you know. That, I mean, I wish I'd just paid more attention to the family knowledge, the stories, and, you know, all things that have happened in the past. And again, you know, like not having Edward, I had Dad to bounce off, you know, when you'd got problems, you know, have you had this happen to you, you know, and what alteration would you do for that? One of the things that used to drive me crazy with Dad was his love of salmon fishing. Our local river is hydroelectric. You know, somebody would flick a switch in Glasgow and let all the water down. So Dad would disappear out the road to see the level of the river, and I would be trying to finish my tailoring, but that would mean I would have to keep serving in the shop. If the river level was right, he'd come back and he would get all his fishing gear on. He fished in a tweed jacket and tie with his waders. Out he would go, and at that point I used to get mad. It drove me crazy. But now, the place in life I am now, I understand that he needed that release, and he had something else from the shop. That was his escape.